and I am here with another Mixed Media Mayhem recipe. This recipe is by our very own Sandie, and I'm also playing along with my Kit Conspiracy kit. So I have picked out several little things, plus I have a bunch of sticker book stickers left. I plan on using the wood grain, or the tree rings, I should say, and the leaves. I was just showing you guys that. I might tear those papers out. I'm not sure. Then I rifled through all of my embellishment clusters that I had in all my leaf trays and pulled out all the mushrooms on the sticker sheet, on the sticker book, chipboard, cardstock, all that stuff. And then I pulled out these two items that I actually forget that I'm going to use. I have 3 photos that I'm going to play with, and then I have 3 papers that I thought I was going to play with. So while I was pulling out all these supplies, I actually, in all honesty, forgot about the supplies I needed for mixed media, because as you can see, I have no paint, I have no embossing, and I have no stencils to show you guys. Right now, I am just showing you guys the paper. So what I was thinking about this mushroom paper is that I just really wanted to use that book report paper that had the mushrooms on it, even though it had all the mushrooms on the background. And then I pulled out this other piece of paper that looked like this collage on the left. That was going to be my background. And then I flipped the green paper over, and oh my gosh, my mind started racing. And then I realized I did not pull out the supplies I was going to use for mixed media. So 2 of the supplies that I have are these embossing folders along with matching die cuts. So you run the embossing folder through your paper and then you cut them out with the die cuts or fussy cut. It's up to you. And then the next set, the first one was Stamp It Up. This one here is a Tim Holtz, again, an embossing folder, but it's got a big chunky die that you run it through, and then you run the embossing folder over it. So you do the opposite. You die cut first, then emboss, obviously. So here are the results of the Tim Holtz, and these ones here are the results of the Stampin' Up. Now, I did cheat a little bit because this layout gets a little long, I have to say. But what I did to enhance all the features is I just took my blending tool and inked the edges either in walnut stain or ground espresso, just whichever one met my fancy. Also, too, I have this stencil here from Close to My Heart that I plan on using my Mintay chalk paint in, and this one here is in beige. So it's going to be a really cool greeny brown look. So first I have to figure out how my photos are going to go, because I had an envision in my brain how this layout was going to look, and then all of a sudden I forgot my mixed media stuff. So now I had to kind of switch gears and come up with something different. So I thought, okay, maybe I can do a little bit of both. So the first thing I was going to do was try to cut this photo at an angle down to 2.5 inches. Yeah, that was not going to happen. So I decided to just go ahead and put the sticker on this photo. I really, really am trying to use up the sticker sheet, you guys. I have that one ginormous collage down at the bottom, and that is it, other than all the little tiny words and things like that. But those I can use easily later if I remember that they're there. So what I did was I went ahead and I cut down all my photos, matted them on the blue cardstock, which is the opposite of the brown cardstock that I have been using. I just used up all the scraps, and then I traced an outline of where my photos are going to go, because I don't want to waste my time and effort into putting mixed media there when it's not going to be seen. All right, the thing about these chalk paints, and I sped this up quite a bit because this is very, very boring and very, very time consuming. So the thing about these chalk paints is that they are like a paste, and they definitely have to be mixed before using. So all the water's down at the bottom, all the paint and the chalky portion is up at the top. It kind of like floats on top. So you just take a stir stick of some sort and mix it up real good till it becomes this beautiful creamy texture. Unfortunately, you have to do that every time you want to use these, unfortunately, and I apologize about that. So the next thing is I'm using this round dauber. This is the first time I'm actually using these rounded daubers to apply my paint. Now, it definitely does not apply like the flat dauber does. I'm going to have to say that because it was definitely a learning curve for me to figure out how to get it through my stencil. the first thing that you want to do is you want to load up your dauber with paint and then make sure that when you dab it off, it's not going to be juicy. You want the paint in your dauber, but you don't want it on your dauber, if that makes any sense. And then, of course, I want to tell you guys a little bit because I've heard some bad things about these daubers. Now, this is my very first time ever using these daubers, and mine is from Ranger. So mine was the brand suited for this knob, or handle, I should say, for this type. And I've heard lots of people say that when you use it through a stencil, it flakes and falls apart and all this other stuff. Well, I personally wasn't using it in the way that it had ink on it. It just had paint on it. So I was actually daubing it rather than running it back and forth over there. I did not have the flaking from that. And then I just take my dauber and run it under warm water to mix the paint out so I can continue to use it. If you guys were curious about that. All right, so now I'm taking Walnut Stain in Distress ink and going over all of that paintwork. Look at that. I love that, you guys. It looks like I have my own, wood grain paper. It really, really does. If I would have done the whole thing, it would have looked even better, but I didn't want to cover up. Just what a waste. Okay, so here's where I remembered that frame. Yeah, it's not going to get used. This, especially when I already did my mixed media per the 4x6 size instead of the 3x5 size that the frame was. So yeah, that's just not going to happen. And then, of course, I thought, do I still want to use this paper? Oh, I was going to use that too. Well, let's cut it out and see if I can. A lot of wasted effort gets done on this layout that's not necessary because I go through all this work. I cut this. It's not a book report. What is that called, you guys? A book borrowing paper. Oh my gosh, we used to have them all the time. So anyways, I go through all of this work, set it off to the side. There it sits. I totally forget about it after this moment. Go me. So then I debated because I put my photos on the right. The paper was meant to be on the right. And I debated, okay, I'm going to rip it off, ink the edges, and see what it looks like upside down. Well, when I start inking and having it upside down as is now, I don't really notice a difference. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it upside down. I'm going to go ahead and ink the edges and scuff up the edges and just give it a little bit more texture. The paint did add quite a bit of texture. In fact, I love doing this technique with paint through a stencil and then rubbing over it. It's almost like you just used an embossing folder in that entire section. It really, really is. It's so super cool. And I know that this probably isn't, my tree rings probably aren't the embossing that Sandie had in mind, but it's still an embossing form. So I am trying to look at stencils, embossing, and paint in a different way that others might use. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Also, I wanted my banner piece to be popped up because that's kind of the feeling it gives me is that it is very dimensional. It's very full. It's very dimensional. And of course, it's got this little brown bear sticking his head out. I have no use for that little brown bear. So I'm going to try to figure out how to cover him up as usual. But first, I'm going to stop and create clusters. I'm going to go ahead and make a bunch of embellishment clusters. I envisioned, before I realized I had to do mixed media on this layout, I envisioned having all of these mushroom, tree ring, leafy bits all over my layout. In fact, that was going to be my background for my layout until I remembered I was supposed to do mixed media. So it changed my entire thing. But you know what? I really wanted to make these mushroom leafy tree rings. I really, really did. So that's what I'm going to do. Off camera, I went and I sorted out all of the embellishments that I pre-picked out. I even picked out a few more butterflies because I realized that some of the pre-made clusters that were already there for me, or I should say pre-printed clusters, they actually ended up having butterflies on them. And I thought, okay, well, if I use them, then I want more butterflies on my layout. So I pulled them out and will apply them later to the layout. Some of them get added to these tree rings and others do not. But I mostly have at least 2 mushrooms per tree ring. I pulled out the leaves from my sticker book, and that's kind of what I'm struggling with, is the peeling the sticker back off because somebody recently said, why don't you cut the sticker on the sticker sheet before cutting it as its sticky self? And I thought, oh my God, you guys are geniuses. I would have never thought about that. You guys are probably yelling at me this whole time. But yeah, it is a pain to peel the backing off of it once I have cut it. But oh my gosh, how much faster my cutting went when I actually cut it on the carrier sheet before peeling the sticker off. It was nice. Okay, and I also found this tiny little word that says explore. I was going to put that on this tiny little tree ring. And I know some of the tree rings get covered up a lot, but I do want, I want them as their base piece. I want them as the prominent bases for all of my embellishments. And once I'm done creating with my loose mushrooms, I guess is what I'm trying to say, then I'm not going to create any more embellishments. That's pretty much it. And I'm okay if I have leftover tree rings. I don't end up using them all anyways. So yeah, I was just having all of my bases in front of me, so I didn't have to think that I wished I had more, if that makes any sense. All right, so I'm going to finish off this last one. I've got chipboard pieces mixed with stickers, mixed with cardstock pieces, mixed with foam pieces. I mean, just mixture upon mixture upon mixture. And then, of course, I wanted one more leaf before calling it good. I think this is the last one that I put together, I believe. And then there are some chipboard clusters that look exactly like the one that is right above with the two little mushrooms and then the yellow butterfly. They were identical to that, and I really didn't want that 3 times on my layout. So I chose not to use those. I just chose to use this paper one. And then those 2 foam ones that are still on the carrier sheet, along with that sticker, I'm definitely going to be using those on my layout, just not on the tree ring. They're going to be used to cover up. So once I am done with this last little bit, and I haven't even used those tiny word stickers. You guys, my nemesis, I swear, are tiny word stickers. I think I love them, but I just have a hard time using them. So as I said before, this is my last one, but let me make 2 more. That's what I'm good at. These are just random photos. Every time that we don't live in a very moist area, and so when we actually see mushrooms, quote unquote, in the wild, we get excited. I know it's lame-o of us to do that, but we do, especially my oldest boy. This is my oldest son, Gabriel, and he gets uber super excited when he sees mushrooms because it's like we see them in a grocery store, and that's our extent of seeing a mushroom, in all honesty. And so every time we do, we take goofy pictures and serious pictures and close-up pictures and all that stuff, just because it's a phenomenon in our little world, in our corner of the little world. So, and this one happens to be in California, so I'm pretty sure they're all over California. But he actually jumped over this the root that is right behind him in the 6x4 photo. He jumped over that root and looked down exactly like he almost is right now, and said, mushrooms. Like he had no idea, he wasn't expecting it. It was such a surprise and so funny. I had to capture the moment. All right, so I went ahead and I started with all of my pre-made clusters, put them on the layout, got them all secured and glued down, and now I am just adding all of the rest of the bits, filling in gaps, overlapping tree rings, using up the elements that I knew I wanted to use. I am basically trying to put every mushroom that came in this collection on this layout. I still end up with about 2 left over, two of those clusters, like I said, because they were the same, and I didn't want 3 of the same thing on the layout. I do have 3 of the same mushrooms all over my layout, but because I use them in different clusters, it's not as noticeable. I love the pop of that orangey red in all of these layouts. That is just one of my favorite things. Last but not least, I am going to fussy cut out that little sticker, add it to fill in the gap, and then I'm going to add these last little foam mushrooms, again, to help me fill in the gap, and mostly to help with the consistency of those that I can't fussy cut around with that white border, if that makes sense. So I've got the banner with the big white border. I've got a chipboard piece with a frog, weird, on the with a big white border. I've got a butterfly with a big white border because it's chipboard as well. And now my 2 foam pieces. And so it just carries on that big white border all over the place and makes it calming to the eye because it is not just one spot. It's not an eyesore. It's more of a, oh, okay, it was meant to be type of deal. Last thing I'm going to add is the nature is all you need, which I thought was pretty cool because seriously, we love nature. We love going and exploring all the different things, looking at how trees grow differently, checking out the bark of them. I mean, we are nerds when it comes out to nature and all the things that we notice, how veiny this leaf is and how awkward this branch grew. I mean, just the coolest little things, you guys. Maybe I'll have, I think it's called a horticulturist in the family. Who knows? But that is my layout. You guys, I absolutely loved making my wood grain background. I love my, my embossing folders with my die cuts. I absolutely love those. And, I'm a collector of those. I can't say I'm a user for sure, but I'm definitely a collector of tools. And when I get to pull them out and play with them and remember that I have them, it is just so much fun. I definitely need to bring back Take Out Your Tools Tuesday because I do miss playing with my tools. I do miss getting all that stuff out. Anyways, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Please be sure to check out the list down below of everyone else that is joining us for Mixed Media Mayhem. Also, too, Janet Fritz, she is joining me for Mixed Media Mayhem, but she is also playing along with Kit Conspiracy with me and using up these exact same papers. So I'm curious how she brought in the stencils and embossing and the paint and all that good stuff. I'm very curious about that. All right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will check y'all later. Bye.